What's up, guys? ArtistVersion1 here, and welcome back to another edition of Stories No One Asked For, the podcast. And if you don't know by now, about 4 years ago, I wrote a little book called, Stories No One Asked For. And upon numerous attempts of trying to write a follow up to it, I just couldn't find the focus to do it and sit down and write another book. So I figured, why not take those stories, plus stories that I've already written, and put them into podcast form. And that's what I do here on Stories No One Asked For, the podcast. And occasionally bring on some guests and let them tell you stories that you didn't ask for as well. Um, but tonight we're gonna do something that I've done before here, and that is tell a little anthology of stories here. A series of unfortunate events is what I'm calling it here, because all the stories tonight just are very unfortunate stories that happened to me. But before we get to those stories, we got to give a shout out to the great people over at MoviesAreUSA.biz. And if you don't know what MoviesAreUSA.biz is, like I say, stop skipping past this part of the podcast. MoviesAreUSA.biz is a great website where you can head on over, find those hard to find TV shows and movies that have either never been released on physical media or haven't been released on physical media in quite a long time. And Best Buy and Target and all these other places, physical media just even the pawn shops now. The pawn shops are getting rid of physical media. There's a pawn shop near me that got rid of all their DVDs, all their box sets. All they sell now is Blu-rays, which I'm just like, really, dude? It's sad. And websites like MoviesAreUSA.biz is keeping physical media, is letting you keep that physical disc in your hand. And if you like those streaming shows and you're like, how come they don't release these on DVD or Blu-ray? Well, that's what MoviesAreUSA.biz does as well. So if you're looking for Wednesday from Netflix, which recently won an Emmy, I should say, um, or Netflix's Beef, you can head on over to MoviesAreUSA.biz. They'll put that on Blu-ray for you for a good, reasonable price. And if that price just isn't reasonable enough for you, you can use my checkout code, that being ARTIST, ARTIST, at checkout, and save not 10, not 20, not 30, not 40, but 50. That's right, 50% on your purchase. But wait, there's more, because you're also going to get free first class shipping as well. And for the very few international listeners that I have, you're also going to get free first class international shipping as well. And if you look through all the items they have on the website, and for some reason you're like, hey, they don't have the show I want, message them. He's more than happy to look up a request there for you, see if he can slap that on desk for you, and still use that checkout code, still get the free shipping. A whole bunch of, they're not just a sponsor of Stories No One Asked For, the podcast. I'm a customer. Every now and then I'm just like, you know what, I'm just gonna buy this right now, man. I'm not even gonna wait for them to send me a little something on the side, man. I'm just gonna buy it, because that's how good MoviesAreUSA.biz. So head on over to MoviesAreUSA.biz today. Use that checkout code. Again, that is ARTIST, ARTIST. Use it at checkout and save yourself 50% on your checkout. All right, so let's get into these stories here today. We got three very unfortunate event of stories. Two of which have been in the book. So if you haven't gotten my book, then you're going to be able to get to hear these stories for the first time. One of which I've talked about before, but it fits with the theme. So I figure, why not talk about it here tonight? So let's get into it. The first story here is called The Ticket. I was living in Houston at the time, and my mom was out of work at the time. So on those days that I had to work, I would drive the car. Now, I should state right now, I could operate a moving vehicle, but I did not have a piece of paper from the state that said I was allowed to drive said vehicle. So, I was actually called into work this day. Somebody called out, and I was working at Borders. So they're like, hey, Will, can you come in for a bit? I was like, yeah, sure. What time? They were like, 11 to 6. I was like, right on. I gotcha. It was a Sunday. So 11 to 6 is basically 11 to close, essentially. So I was like, yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, no problem. So I drove up there and everything. It was, a little rainy, a little wet out and everything. Drive up there, no problem. I worked my shift. It was a nice, easy shift. I didn't really have to deal with anybody. It was a chill day. One of the rare few chill days that I had. So I'm leaving the mall, And when you leave the mall, you have to like go down this. In Texas, they're called feeder roads. So you get on this one feeder road, then you have to make a left at this light, and then get on the highway. So I go down the feeder road. I turn left at the street light. Look to my right, and I see the adult store. And I always told myself, I'm gonna go in that motherfucker. And eventually, I did. It just took me like 3 years later to do it. So I'm getting on the highway, and there's some traffic. I see it. Um, so like I see this car in front of me, and we're driving. Obviously, we're going onto a highway. So as I see I'm merging onto the highway, I look behind me to see that when I get on the highway, I'm gonna have room and I don't have to fight anybody to get over. So I look behind me, check the blind spot. That is, look behind me. I look back. All of a sudden, the car that was in front of me is at a stop. I'm like, why the fuck is this car stopping? Slam on the brakes. Well, it being a rainy day in Houston, you know, the road was a little wet. So I couldn't get that nice, perfect stop that I was hoping for. So I slam the brakes and like I see that like I'm coming close to this car. So I was like, let me turn, see if I can avoid hitting it. So I turned the wheel to the right. I jerked the wheel to the right. And I felt something. I don't know if I slammed into this car. I don't know if I grazed it, whatever. So I knew I had to have hit this car. So I was like, son of a bitch. I was just like, you're fucking kidding me, dude. Because, like, I don't have a license or anything. So, I immediately pull, or like I'm halfway pulled over to the side of the road anyway. And a part of me was just like, I should just fucking drive off and forget this even happened. Because, like, if the cops get called, I don't have a license. I don't, So I see the lady, I didn't know it was a lady at first, but it was a car. I saw the car start driving like it's going to drive off. I was like, oh, okay. She's going to drive off. I'm going to drive off. We're going to forget this fucking happened. Cool. No, she stopped. And she gets out, and it's a lady. I was just like, oh, fuck, here we go. So I get out of the car, and I was like, hey, sorry, I didn't know you stopped, and, and very broken English. So we're looking at her bumper. I was like, oh, God, let me look at the damage. I look at the bumper, and there's nothing on it. There's nothing on it, and she holds her phone up to it, and there's like two little marks, like two tiny little lines or something. She's like, oh, right here. And she puts her finger on one of the lines and runs her finger across it, and the line disappears. So I put my finger on the other line and I run it the other way, and that line disappears. I was like, oh my God, I grazed this car. Oh, thank God. I'm thinking like I smashed into it. My car was okay. While this is happening, a huge tow truck pulls in front of us. Now, in Texas, they're not very, and like right here, I live in Iowa, and like, we had this big blizzard here the other day, and this is a literal thing that I'm about to say. I'm not exaggerating this number, but driving from where I live to work, I counted 53 cars on the side of the road due to this blizzard. Okay, 53 cars. Think about that. Now in Texas, they're not too kind to cars being broke down on the side of the road. You have like X amount of time to get your car off the side of the road before they send a tow truck to tow your shit. So I see the tow truck, and now I'm fucking even more terrified because, like, it's one thing going to jail, but now they're going to tow my mom's car on top of all that. I was like, oh my God, I'm fucking dead. So the guy gets out and he's like, hey guys, how's it going? I was like, I'm sorry, man. I'm going to move real soon and everything. He's like, calm down. I was like, okay, all right, I'm cool, because like I was freaking out. I thought he was here to start towing some shit, And he was like, what seems to be the problem? I was like, I slammed on my brakes and, basically told him what happened. And he was just like, listen, it's cold out. It was like fucking 40 degrees. That's cold in Texas. He was like, listen, it's cold out. It's rainy. This is something the cops really don't like dealing with right now. It's best that you two just exchange information and just be on your way. If you two aren't hurt, you know. So I was like, okay, sounds like a plan to me. So I go to my car, I grab the insurance out and everything, and I grab like a blank piece of like just a back of like a fucking I don't know like a Burger King wrapper or something I don't know, and I go hand her my insurance. I was like, here you go, and she looks at it, you know, and now meanwhile I was getting that she was on her phone, so I hand her my insurance form. And I was like, here you go. And if I can just get your insurance, I'll just write it down. We'll be good to go. So I have my pen ready and everything. She was like, I'm waiting for my husband. I was like, oh, that's fine. That's cool. But if I can just get your information while we wait, I'm waiting for my husband. Okay, that's cool and all. But while we wait, if I can just get your insurance info while we wait, then, we'll get this going and everything. I'm waiting for my husband. Okay, all right. I see where this is going here. You're not going to give me any information until, your husband gets here. Okay, fine. So, I got to go break the news to my mom. So, I called my mom in the car. And I was like, okay, I'm in trouble. She was like, what? What happened? So I told her everything that's happened up until that point. And she was just like, okay, listen, if the cops come, tell them that you asked me to borrow the car. And I said no. And you did it anyway. I'm like, that's grand theft. She's like, no, 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 no. Trust me. If they ask, you borrowed the car. You asked to borrow the car. I said no, and you took it anyway. I was like, I don't know about that, man. She's like, just trust me. I was like, okay, hold on. I see a car pull up behind me. I'm like, hold on, I think that's her husband. Let me get out and try and defuse the situation. She goes, all right, let me know what's happened. Cool, I hang up. I get out of the car, and I'm real nice to everybody. I was like, hey, how's it going, man? And shook his hand and everything. And he was like, good, good. And he walked over to his wife. And now I see them like fucking pulling on their bumper, like they're trying to rip off the bumper. They're trying to come up with some form of damage to like come up with something. And I'm just like, what the fuck are they doing? And I'm looking at a distance, because like at this point, I'm just like, I've had to have hit this bumper at the same speed the feather in Forrest Gump fell down and hit the fucking bench in the beginning scene. Considering that we just wiped the marks off the bumper that we found, So I'm just like, what the hell are they doing? So after a few minutes of that, the guy walks over to me, I'm assuming the husband, and I look at the car and I see that there's a young lady in the front seat and she's just sitting there. But the guy walks over to me and the first thing he says is like, do you have a license? And I was like, all right, let's see if you can talk your way out of this one. I was like, I do. I don't have it with me. I was actually called into work today, which, hey, that part is true. I was called into work today, so I left in a hurry, so I actually don't have it with me. And he was like, he kind of looked at me for a second. He was like, okay. So he walked back over to his wife, and again, they're looking at the bumper and shit, like, again, yanking on it, like if it falls off, they're going to have me for something. You know what I mean? So he walks back over to me again. And he's like, so do you have a license? I was like, listen, if you really want to hear this, and he's like, no, I don't want to hear it. I'm like, okay. I was like, listen, I was called in to work today. Okay. I left in a hurry, so I don't have my wallet today. He was like, okay, I'll just call the police then. I was like, okay. So I got back in my car and I called my mom. First thing I said was, I'm going to jail. She was like, what? I was like, yeah, I tried explaining. I tried talking my way out of the license thing, and the guy's going to call the cops. And she was like, remember, tell him that you borrowed the car and that, tell him that you asked to borrow the car, and I said no, and you took it anyway. I was just like, man, I don't think that's going to work, but okay. So now I just sit in the car. Now, meanwhile, this lady still has my insurance form. She hasn't given it back, They're not listening to anything I'm saying. They haven't given me their insurance information at all. So I just sit in the car and I'm waiting for the police to show up and everything. And I just know that, like, once they get there, that's it. Game over, you know? Meanwhile, my mom is going to come up with her boyfriend at the time to, you know, pick me up and all that good shit. So, next thing I see the red and blue behind me, you know? So I'm like, here we go, you know? So I'm just sitting in my car. I roll down the window and I'm just sitting there waiting, you know? Because, like, meanwhile, like, the guy and the girl, they're scrambling all over the place, telling the guy, oh, you know, look at the, you know, I'm just sitting there waiting. I'm chilling, you know? I'll be damned if this cop came over to the window. Okay, he comes over to my window, and he's like, "How you doing?" I'm like, "Good," and he's just like, "Took the car without asking, didn't you?" I was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "Okay, I'll be right back," and I was like, "Wait, wait, wait, you don't need to see an ID or something?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, let me see that." So I give him my ID. He literally glances at it, you know, like didn't even look at anything. It could have been a piece of paper that said ID for all he knew, but he just glanced at it and says, "Okay, there you go. I'll be right back." So he leaves and everything. Then I see another cop car pull up. Now, come on. Anybody who's ever been pulled over by a cop or anything like that, when you see one cop car, you're like, "Oh fuck," but when you see two, you know you're in fucking trouble. And I knew my ass was going to jail then. So then I see my mom and her boyfriend pull up. So I kind of like slowly step out of the car. I didn't want to fucking, you know, this is before George Floyd and shit. So like, but still, I didn't want to like hop out of the car and like, get back in there, bang, bang, bang. You know, I'm fucking dead. Um, so I slowly step out of the car and I just stood by my car door. You know, I didn't go anywhere. So, my mom comes over and she was just like, did you tell him that you asked to borrow the car?" And I said, "No." I was like, "He already knew." And she was like, "Did he?" I was like, "Yeah." So, um, a third cop car pulls up. I was like, "Oh fuck," you know. So the cops are all talking with the people I hit and everything, or allegedly hit, I guess would be a better way to put it. So finally, the young lady who was sitting in the front seat has also joined in on this conversation with the police officers and everything. Now, let me backtrack a little bit. Okay? Remember when I said the tow truck driver pull up and said, "Hey, if you guys aren't hurt, it's just better to exchange information and call it a day here. Either you guys hurt?" I said, "Nope, I'm fine." And the lady said, "Nope." Okay. So now the cops are pretty much like, "Listen, it's rainy, it's wet, we're fucking over this. We don't want to deal with a fucking fender bender right now." You know? They were pretty much gonna slap me on the wrist and send me on my way. You know? So then the lady says, she had the audacity to say, "My back hurts." And I'm like, "What?" You know? And the cop just kind of looks at her and says, "Really?" And she says, "Yeah, my back hurts." And like the other cop, there's like three cops on the scene, and they're all like young cops too. Like, not like the old timers and shit. These are like fresh out of cop school cops, you know, like fucking mid-20s and shit. You know, they're probably excited for like their first big case. They're getting a call like, "Oh, can you come to, oh, fuck, what was that highway? 360, I think. No, not 360. Yeah, 360. They're like, "Come to Highway 360." They're thinking they're going to see a dead body and they're going to have to invest a homicide and shit. And they show up and there's my big dumb ass there, you know? Um, and they're just like, "Fuck, this is my first call." You know, like, you can tell, like, they're like, "This is what we have to fucking deal with." Like, there's no damage. And that's what they said. They're like, "There's no damage on your car." And she's like, "My back hurts." So then this one cop just loses it. You know, he looks at her and says, "You know what? I want your license and ID." He looks at her husband and says, "I want your license and ID, your license and insurance." Oh, he said that to the lady. I'm sorry, not license and ID. "I want your license and insurance." Points to the husband. "I want your license and insurance." Then points to like the 18-year-old that was with him and says, "I want your license and insurance." I was like, fuck, you know? I was like, can I go? I didn't say that, but I wanted to and everything. And then they were just like, well, can we call an ambulance? And the cop said, if you want an like, there's one exit, the exit that I hit her on. Well, if you go up like another mile, maybe a little less than a mile, there's another exit to get off to go somewhere else. So they're like, can we call an ambulance? And the cop's like, no, we're not calling an ambulance for this. If you want an ambulance, when we're done here, go to the next exit and call for an ambulance. This cop was pissed, you know? So, um, apparently the wife hands him the license and insurance. And that was another thing they were pissed off about. And they're like, don't you ever hold somebody's insurance like that again. Because they took my insurance and wouldn't give it to me, you know? And then when I'm trying to get their information, they wouldn't give it to me. So the husband gives him his license and insurance. Well, the girl's like digging through her like a bag in her car. Like I see her like digging through a bag. She's like some 18-year-old kid. What insurance is she gonna fucking have on her at like 6:30 at night? 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. So I'm just like, what is she gonna come up with? Like I'm thinking at a distance, like, okay, they asked for her license and insurance. What insurance? She was the fucking passenger. What insurance is she gonna come up with? Like, this is, oh my god, this is great. Man, if I had popcorn, man, it'd been fucking even better. You know? So the girl finally said, like, I don't have any insurance with me. So they're just like, fine then. But we're not calling it an ambulance and everything. They're like, okay. They knew they'd been had at this point. So the cop comes over to me and he was like, listen, we weren't going to give you a ticket, but because they threatened an ambulance, we have to give you a ticket now. I was like, that's fine, that's fair. So it was like, here, we're giving you a ticket for failure. I think the terminology was failure to slow speed to cause accident or something like that, and driving without a license. He was like, sign here. I was like, all right. So I signed it and shit. And he was just like, all right, well, you guys have a good night. I mean, the cops are like super cool with me. Like it was them they were pissed off at. And like you always see those videos about cops getting pissed off at people and everything. Man, these people had a legit reason because like I barely hit this car, and like all of a sudden, they're just like, oh, my back hurts. And after she just told the tow truck driver, oh, I'm fine. Here's the PS to the story. So I have those tickets and everything, and so they want me to go to court for them. See, I just wanted to pay the tickets. I was going to work to get the money and pay the tickets. So, but a lawyer's just like, no, we're going to plead not guilty. I'm like, beg pardon? Why? Like, I did it. Let's just plead guilty. Maybe they lower the fine. No. Their theory was like, we plead not guilty. They push back the court date, to the point where they just say, fuck it. Like that was the theory. And again, I did not fucking agree with that at all. I didn't like that one fucking bit, But they're a lawyer, so I went with it. And they're like, you don't have to show up to the first court proceeding. We show up for you. Da-da-da-da, all this stuff. I said, okay, cool. So, oh, you know what? No, that adult store I mentioned earlier? I've already been in there. Yeah, because of this PS. That's why. So, they plead not guilty for me. They push the court date to this, but then we find out I'm moving. So I move and everything, and the next court date's coming up, and I call. Now, I know some people are going to be like, well, fucking duh. When you hear this, at the time, I didn't fucking know this. Okay? So I call the lawyer. I'm living in Illinois now. So I call the lawyer, and I let him know my situation. I was like, hey, I actually moved, so I can't actually make it there, so what's the protocol? And they're just like, well, you have to come. I was just like, yeah, but I moved. And they're like, yeah, but you still have to come. I'm like, okay, do y'all cover my travel expenses or anything? They're like, well, no. And I'm like, okay, all right, bye, click, hung up. Never seen it again. Did not go because I thought that was stupid. I'm like, what do you, I can understand still having to show up. It's not like the court's gonna be like, oh, he moved. Oh, fuck, problem solved. I can understand that, but like, they're not gonna pay my. You wanted me to fucking plead not guilty. I didn't, and you're not gonna cover my fucking costs from Illinois to Texas? No, get fucked. So that was the ticket. The next one here is probably one of the most the most series of unfortunate fucking events I've ever had in my life. So one day my mom was off work, and I think I off. What was it, Houston? So yeah, I was either off work, or I was in between jobs, one of the two. So that movie Julia and Julia came out with what was it, Meryl Streep? I think Meryl Streep, yeah. No, not Meryl Streep. Fuck, I can't remember. Um, so my mom's like, "Hey, let's go see that movie." We both wanted to go see it. I was like, "Right on, cool." So, but she's like, first, and it's summer, it's hot, Texas hot and shit. But she's like, "Hey, let's go get something to eat first, and then we'll go." I was like, "Okay, cool. Where do you want to go? What do you feel like?" And she was like, "Chinese sounds good." I was like, "Chinese sounds good to me too. Let's roll." So she takes me to this place. Never heard of it, but it's Chinese food, kind of hard to fuck up, you know. So we get to the place, and I step out of the car, and like I go to step on like the little sidewalk, and my ankle rolls. You know how like your ankle just rolls? It doesn't sprain, but like it rolls and shit, but it hurts like a motherfucker. So I was like, she's like, what's wrong? I was like, my ankle, fuck, my ankle, like, shit. So now I have a limp because like it fucking hurts and shit. So I was like, damn it, you know. So we go inside the Chinese restaurant, and oh my god, I would have been better off eating outside because, Texas, it was like, I don't know, summer, it was like 85, 90 degrees that day. I think inside this Chinese restaurant, it was like, I don't know, a shade under 200. Like it was fucking hot in here. I'm like, what the shit, dude? It's a Chinese restaurant, not a fucking sweatshop. I felt like I should have been knitting, like making an iPod or some shit, or like a fucking flashlight, screwdriver, AM, FM radio or some shit. So we order, and like I'm burning, dude. So I got chicken and broccoli. So I'm eating my chicken and broccoli, and I'm burning. But I see all these like fans in the restaurant, like all these like electric fans. So I was like, fuck this, man. So like I see a fan and I see an outlet near me. So I bend over to grab the plug, and all of a sudden I hear whack. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Mom's like, what? I was like, I think my shorts just ripped. I was wearing jean shorts. She was like, are you kidding me? I was like, no. So I plugged the fan in, and I kind of feel back there for the damage, and yep, there's a big rip. I was like, you are fucking, oh my god. I was like, this can't get any worse, can it? Oh, it gets worse. Well, not worse, but. So we get done eating, get outside, and we start to head to the movie theater. So I'm having to like walk with a limp. I'm having to like walk awkwardly to like pull my shirt down over my ass. So like, you don't see the rip, you know? So like it kind of looks like I'm natural, but it also kind of like, oh, why is he walking funny? Um, so we get to the theater, and we get our tickets, and it was like there was two theaters in Texas that I mainly went to. One was called Tinseltown, and one was the Marquee Center. Well, we went to the Marquee Center. Now, Tinseltown, I didn't get drinks at because one time I had a Diet Coke there, and it tasted like it was filtered through somebody's fucking sock. It was the nastiest fucking, and that pretty much killed like me getting drinks and snacks at movie theaters for like a long, long time. I still don't get drinks and snacks at movie theaters really that often. But at the Marquee Center where we were, I tend to get a drink sometimes. So my mom, she has to have popcorn. Whenever she goes to a fucking theater, she has to have fucking popcorn. It's like some Pavlovian response, Like once you go to a movie theater, her fucking mouth just salivates for fucking popcorn. So she's like, I'm gonna get popcorn. Do you want anything? I was like, you know what? Yeah, I could go for a large Coke Zero at the time. She's like, okay, so she gets the popcorn, she gets the drink, I get my Coke Zero and shit. We go into the theater, sit down, put the drink in the cup holder. She's eating her popcorn. Lights go out, previews start and everything, you know. So, you know, one of the previews go off, and I was like, cool. And I lift up my drink, and, you know, Captain Idiot at the concession stand didn't put the lid on properly all the way. So when I lift the drink up, the lid popped off, and a lot of my drink just spilled onto my lap. I was like, you were kidding me, man. Like, oh my God. My mom was like, what? I was like, my drink just spilled on me. She was just, at that point, she kind of laughed to herself. She was like, I was like, it's not funny. Like, because at this point, I'm just like, oh my God, like, what else could happen? I've hurt my ankle. I've torn my pants. My drink has spilled on me, you know? So, movie starts, and the movie's good, you know? Uh, and, like, halfway through, we hear thunder outside. You know? Like, oh, it must be raining. Okay, cool, whatever. Hear a little bit of thunder and everything, watching the movie, everything. All of a sudden, a big crash of thunder goes, and then, like, you know, you hear the lightning, and all of a sudden, the screen of the movie theater goes off. Because that's how powerful it was. And it was just quiet in the movie theater. And the only thing you hear next is just a voice. And a voice was just saying, God damn it. And that was me. Because I was just like, what else? You know? Now, like, I'm limping. My fucking pants have been torn. My fucking drink has spilled on me. And now, halfway through this movie, the fucking storm has knocked out the power to where it's gone off. Like, what next? What could possibly happen next? Thankfully, nothing happened next. You know, I was able, they were able to get the movie back up and going. We watched the movie. I can tell you to this day that I haven't watched it again, even though it was a good movie. But for some reason, to this day, I have never watched that movie again. You know, just because the day associated with that was just filled with so many, like, bad things for me. Like my ankle rolling, my pants ripping, hot, sweaty fucking sweatshop Chinese food. You know, I was just like, oh my God, man. You know? And the last story I want to tell you guys here. Again, this is one that I've told before, but I don't think, you know. So, as we were moving to Texas, we drove to Texas, you know, so we figured on the way there, we'd make a few stops. First stop was Atlanta, Georgia, which, I'll tell you right now, if you stop at a hotel in Atlanta, Georgia, um, don't go to the pool, because if you're the only white person in that hotel, you are going to be a spectacle. Let me tell you, that was a little awkward for me. Like, me and my sister, we went swimming in the pool thinking like, hey, we'll get a swim in before we hit the road and everything. And we just noticed that we were the only white people there, and everybody was staring at us from a distance. It was one of the creepiest fucking feelings I've ever felt, you know? So we got the hell out of Atlanta. Next stop was New Orleans, Louisiana, you know? And we're like, hell yeah, this one's going to be fun, you know? So we find a hotel for the night, because we're like, oh man, come on, when are we going to be in New Orleans again, you know? So we find a hotel for the night, and everything, we rest up. Then the next day, we're like, okay, you know, we'll go out and explore Bourbon Street, all that stuff, you know? So there's a casino there. So, you know, my mom has to go to that fucking casino, man. It's going to fucking kill her not to go to that casino. But me, one, I'm not old enough to go to the casino. You know? Two, I don't want to go anyway. You know? So I'm just like, isn't there like a movie theater nearby or something? You know? And there happened to be a movie theater across the street from the hotel. The trick was the movie didn't start until, I think it was like 6 o'clock, you know? So we started this little adventure at like 4 o'clock, you know? So, So my mom and sister went to the casino, and they're just like, all right, the casino's there. You can just walk up and down, look at the shops and everything for a little bit. I was like, all right, cool. You know, I was getting old enough, so I was getting like more independent and everything. So I went inside the Tabasco store, which was really cool because Tabasco was created in New Orleans. So like everything was Tabasco, man. Like Tabasco Mardi Gras beads, Tabasco suckers, Tabasco, lipstick. Like it was fucking. It was bizarre, and I bought like these Canadian um, Mardi Gras beads, and story behind those for another day. I thought those were really cool at the time. So the coolest thing to me at the time was now, in New Orleans, there's bars and everything. Well, obviously I wasn't old enough to drink, you know, but it was cool going to sit at a bar. I sat at a bar and they were just like, what would you like to drink? I was like, uh, was that diabetic? No. So I think I got a Coke or something. I was like, just a Coke, please. And they're like, okay. So it was just cool being able to sit at a bar and chill out and everything. So I just got a Coke and sat at the bar and everything. So I thought that was really cool. It's like one of my first like adult things to do, even though it wasn't alcohol. I just sat at the bar and just kind of like chilled and had my Coke and everything. It was pretty cool. Hit a few more of the shops, kind of see what they had in there. They were all like touristy like shops. But then the time came where the movie theater was across the street. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go see the movie. Because I thought that weekend, I thought Charlie's Angels Full Throttle came out. It wasn't. It was actually the next weekend. So I go across the street, I find the movie theater, and I go up, and they only have 4 movies playing. One was Bend It Like Beckham. One was a movie called Whale Rider. One was one I can't remember to this day. And the other one was a movie called 28 Days Later. And it looked like some horror movie. So just judging from the posters, I was like, you know what? 28 Days Later looks like the winner. I'm gonna see 28 Days Later. So I paid for the ticket. I go in, saw the movie, and it was a great movie. It had a great soundtrack. To this day, it's a great movie. It's one of those movies that holds up very well. Um, so we're gonna meet somewhere at sometime. I can't remember what time. But like, I was like, I still have some time. I'm gonna go look in some of these shops some more, you know? So I look in a few more shops, a really cool thing about, because I was just like, I think like 2 years prior is when I really started using the artist gimmick. Um, what year is this? Yeah, so about 2 years prior is when I really started using the artist gimmick. So the House of Blues, the New Orleans House of Blues was there, and they have two big giant doors that say artist entrance. So like that was really cool to see because I was like, artist entrance, my door, and shit. So that was like really cool to see. So anyway, so I'm looking through a few more shops, and it's almost time to meet my mom and sister. So I'm walking down. All of a sudden, a pregnant lady approaches me. Like she's like pregnant. She's wearing shorts. And she was like, "Hey, how you doing tonight?" I was like, "Good." And she was like, "Go ahead, shake my hand. Black don't rub off." I was like, "Okay, how you doing?" Um, and she was like, "How you doing tonight?" I was like, "Good, good." And she was just like, "Well, let me tell you something." I was like, "Okay, fucking kid in New Orleans, I'll listen." She was like, "What if I can tell you where you got your shoes?" Now that intrigued me because I'm just like, okay, my mom used to work at a shoe store in Lewisburg, North Carolina. And not a chain store, so it's not like Payless or what was the other fucking chain one they had? I don't know, but it's not Payless or anything like that. So I'm just like, man, that'd be pretty impressive if she can tell me that shit. I'm intrigued. And I was like, okay, you know, and she was just like, okay, you got your shoes on your feet. I was like, motherfucker, like why did I think of that? All of a sudden, this guy is at my feet and he sprays like this shit on my shoes, like on the toe of my shoes and everything. He sprays like this stuff and he just wipes it off, and all of a sudden it's bright fucking white. Like whatever this cleaning product is pretty damn good. I was like, oh wow, that's cool. You know, and she was like, okay, that's $20 a shoe. I have change. I'm like, I had $16 in my pocket. $16. That's it. You know? And I was like, and I was about to be like, sorry, don't have any. And I was going to start walking away, but they kind of gave like, not, not like a threatening type of like vibe or anything, but like they kind of like stood around me in a way of just like, I wouldn't do that. You know, not like if I ran, they were going to beat my ass for it or anything, but like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, it didn't feel like I was in a dangerous situation, but it was like, like it just, you might just want to listen, you know? So, I pull out the $16 out of my pocket. I was like, all I got is 16. And she was like, oh, that's fine then. Takes the 16. I was like, okay, thanks. So I'm walking back towards the casino and I see my mom and sister. Now, as I'm walking there, it just dawned on me what happened. I was like, I just got fucking robbed. You know, politely, but I got robbed. Huh. So I see my mom and sister coming, and I was just like, you'll never believe what just happened. And my mom's like, what? I was like, I just got robbed. She was like, what? And I was like, yeah. And I told her what happened and everything. And she was just like, who was it? My mom went into like fucking mama bear mode, you know? She was like, who was this? I was like, I don't know, some pregnant lady or something. She was like, show me where. I was like, all right, you know, because I wasn't really fully processing it, and I wasn't even mad about it, you know. It was actually fucking clever and shit, you know, that she got it. So I was like, okay. So we're walking up back towards the area that I was robbed, and there's the pregnant lady, and my mom fucking loses it. You know? She was like, there's that fucking crack whore who took this kid's money. This lady, I've never seen a pregnant lady cross the street faster in my fucking life. You know? And I was just like, okay. You know? So I was like, okay, that happened, you know? So my mom was like, I cannot fucking believe that. And I was just like, I mean, shit. She was like, how much did you give her? I was like, $16. She was like, how much do you have left? I was like, none. She was like, oh my God. Here's the kicker to this story. So after she calms down, she's like, let's go get something to eat. I was like, all right, cool, that sounds good. So we're looking for a place to eat around there. And we walk past the Bubba Gump shrimp, Forrest Gump restaurant and everything. And we're like, no, not there. There's a guy standing by a trash can that has a lid. And I kind of like glance over at him, and he's like, "Hey, man, how you doing?" I was like, "Good." He was like, "Well, I'm the magic man of New Orleans. I make things disappear." And he has a stack of quarters and like two other items on top of his trash can, and I'm just like, "Oh, look at this!" And my mom's like, "Would you bring your ass? You already fell for this once." And I was like, "Oh yeah." Like I totally done forgot. Like I'm already mystified. I'm like, shit, I'm gonna see shit disappear, you know, like a fucking magic show, you know? And my mom was just like, you're stupid. Like, let's go. You know, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. You know, but the other thing, I wouldn't even say this was unfortunate, but to me, I thought it was really fucking cool. So the hotel we were staying at, they had a rooftop pool. And I was like, that is fucking dope, man. You know, I was like, I gotta go to this rooftop pool. They're like, well, we're leaving in a couple hours. I was like, I know, but I got to do this. Just say I was on a rooftop pool. They're like, it's raining out. I was like, I don't care. Got to go, you know? So I go up to the rooftop pool, and I'm swimming in it. I see lightning and thunder. To me, lightning and thunder does not bother me in a fucking pool for some reason, you know? So like I'm just having a grand time, man. I'm on a rooftop pool swimming and shit. I was like, man, this is fucking dope and shit, you know, like woo, man. So I got some time and I went back to the room and she was like, how was it? I was like, man, it was fun, man. It was cool. She was like, even with the rain? I was like, yeah, man, even with the rain, man. I love swimming in the rain. That's like a guilty pleasure of mine. I fucking love swimming when it's raining. It's a great thing for me. Really, really relaxing. Anyway, so we leave, and as we're leaving, we get on this highway, and now it's pouring down. I mean, so much rain, like you have your windshield wipers on high, and you can barely even fucking see shit. You know, like that's how much rain and shit. We're going like fucking 10 miles per hour on this road, And winds blowing and shit. We're like, damn, man, this is a fucking hell of a storm and everything, man. So we get through it and everything. And my aunt, when we get to Texas, my aunt's just like, where were y'all? And we're like, oh, New Orleans. And she was just like, when? We're like, last night. She was like, they had a tropical storm there last night. We're like, they did? She's like, yeah. We're like, oh, fuck. That explains why it was thunderstorming when I was on the roof swimming. And then we're like, oh, that was probably that storm we drove through when we're coming here. Like, we put it all together and everything. It was fucked. We drove through the tropical storm. I swam through the tropical storm, or, during the tropical storm, I guess would be a better way to put it and everything. But, minus the getting robbed part, I mean, New Orleans is a pretty fun town, from what I saw of it. Again, that's when I was a kid. I would love to go back now and actually, like, get to do shit, like drink and, all that stuff and everything. So, yeah, so there you go. There's 3 stories that just have, unfortunate events in them. So, yeah. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this week's episode of Stories No One Asked For, the podcast. And next week, hopefully, I should have a guest. Hopefully. If not, well, we'll figure out something. So, until next time, guys, I'm the ArtistVersion1, and remember, be breezy.